Trinitarian belief. It doesn't make much sense for us to say God is one and three of the same substance. One does not equal three. That's basic mathematics, and mathematics is about the closest thing we get to absolute truth. You can't mess with math. One does not equal three. So Trinity seems kind of impossible, seems kind of like an incoherent claim when we think about it in terms of just one and three of the same substance. So much so that Christians are sometimes accused of being polytheists. And even in Islam, they will say God does not need a son. God is one. And non-Messianic Jews say, no, God is one. They go with Deuteronomy chapter 6 there, the Shema. No, God is one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. There is only one God. And of course, as Trinitarians, we would say, you're right. There is only one God. And we would sympathize a little bit with Muslims who say God does not need a son, because we know that God does not need a son who is merely human. He doesn't need a biological son, and God certainly doesn't need a mother, right? So we would sympathize with those claims, but we would also say that those come from a misunderstanding of what Trinitarian theology actually is. So we say God is not one and three such that one equals three. We say that God is one essence, and of a different substance, God is three persons. So God is one essence, not one and three essences, not one person and three persons, but one essence and three persons. So this is not an incoherent or a self-contradictory claim here. Further, let me pose a question. God, by definition, by essence, by nature, transcends all space-time. He is the author of space-time. He is the author of reality. He is the author of history. He is the author of the unfolding story that is you and me and this wonderful thing we call life. Okay? But he is transcendent. Can God be found by observing nature? Well, no. Why? By observing nature, all we can see is nature. We can't see that which transcends nature. Can God be found by manner of philosophy? No, he transcends human philosophy, the human mind, right? He is beyond comprehension. He is unfathomable. That's what transcendent means. He cannot be found. When people invent gods, we have seen what that leads to, right? It leads to the ancient gods of the Greeks, who also sinned and murdered and had orgies, right? That's the kind of gods people come up with when people invent gods, and there's drama among the gods, and then there's something else other than gods in the same realm, and something like titans, right? And then the gods end up going to war against the titans, and they have even chances of winning until somebody comes out on top. Like we make gods in our images. Like when we create gods, we make them in our image, right? We invent them in our image. We make them like people. And so how is one then to come to know about, just even know about, a transcendent, unfathomable, unknowable God, one who is beyond space-time? Now that's a difficult question, one that can't be answered by simply saying there is only one God. And to simply say God reveals himself doesn't really work, because it turns God into a transcendent being who somehow inserts himself into space-time. And once he inserts himself into space-time, if there's one, there's nothing left transcending space-time. And then all of a sudden, when God inserts himself into space-time, logically speaking, like, he ceases to be God, because he no longer transcends everything and all things. He is no longer unfathomable. He moves through space-time like people. So we have a conundrum here. If there is one God, who is not Trinity, it's impossible for people to ever know God, to even come to a realization of God, to ever become aware of God, to ever have that epiphany like God is real. That becomes impossible. That's just our own synapses firing and fooling us into thinking there's something else out there. But if God, one essence, exists in three persons, now we can talk about divine revelation. Because you have a Father who wills, and you have a Son who reveals, and you have a Spirit who does the effectual calling and work of the Godhead. And you have a singular essence that is transcendent of time and throughout all space-time. We have no idea what this essence is like because it's unfathomable. We can't comprehend it. We can't see it. But then this essence exists in three persons: Father who wills, and Son who reveals within space-time, and the Holy Spirit who does the effectual calling of God. All of the sudden, not only does knowing about God become possible, but knowing God relationally becomes possible, even though in his essence he transcends and is unfathomable. In his personhood, he is knowable. And he can have particular presence in the person of the Son. And he can still have omnipresence throughout all space-time in the person of the Spirit. And there can still be a transcendent will in the person of the Father. And so God ends up being not just a being who exists within this dimension of space-time, right? As if he entered from above or entered from transcending it. But God is a being with so many facets and dimensions that he exists both and we can't comprehend what it's like to have essence and personhood, right? But that's God. The most multi-dimensional being there ever is, I guess is the way I should put that, since he's the I am, right? Always has been, is, always will be, beginning and end. And so if we're not Trinitarian in our theology, knowing God becomes impossible. But if we are Trinitarian in our theology, we can know about God and we can know God.